All right, we are starting with some public hearings tonight. I call to order the public hearing to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance H.R. 462 to approve the Tredyffrin Township final budget for fiscal year 2023. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I do notice, though, that the screen has gone blank for us, so I don't know. Here we go, we're back. Okay. I have marked the following board exhibits for the hearing this evening. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice of the hearing in the Daily Local News on December 5th, 2022. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Mainline Suburban on December 4th, 2022. Board Exhibit 3 is an email to the public hearing distribution list of the Township, enclosing a copy of the notice of the hearing dated December 6th, 2022. Board Exhibit 4 is a copy of the ordinance under consideration by the board this evening. And Board Exhibit 5 is a copy of the actual budget, which is the exhibit to the ordinance. Those are the board exhibits for this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt Ordinance H.R. 462?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any board comment? Do we have any public comment? All right, hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And I'm going to close this public hearing, and I will call to order the public hearing to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance H.R. 463 to fix the rate of taxation for real estate in Tredyffrin Township at 2.682 mils for fiscal year 2023. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I've marked the following board exhibits for this hearing. As this is a tax increase, this ordinance was advertised 3 different times. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local News from November 28th, December 5th, and December 12th, 2022. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Mainline Suburban Times, dated December 4th, 2022. Board Exhibit 3 is the email distribution list, enclosing a copy of the notice dated December 6th, 2022. And Board Exhibit 4 is a copy of the ordinance under consideration by the board. Those are the board exhibits for this hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt Ordinance H.R. 463?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right. Any board comment?
Yeah, I would just say that if you're thinking about it, I want to thank both Joe and Bill and the rest of the township staff and the public for all the comments that we had. I mean, this is a journey. We started with a 5.9% increase, and over the course of 3 public meetings and a bunch of other meetings, we got it down to 4.4%, and I think it's a good result for the township. It's we maintain the high level of service the residents expect, and have an increase which is, I think, reasonable, especially given the inflationary environment that's hitting us. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Any public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries, and I'm going to close this public hearing and call to order our last public hearing of the night, which is to consider and possibly adopt H.R. 464, authorizing a lease with Berwyn Fire Company, property located at 1485 Valley Forge Road. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. The following are the board exhibits for this hearing. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice from the Daily Local News, dated December 5th, 2022. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice from the Suburban Mainline Times, dated December 4th, 2022. Board Exhibit 3 is the email to the public hearing distribution list of the Township, enclosing a copy of the notice of the hearing, dated December 6th, 2022. Board Exhibit 4 is a copy of the ordinance under consideration by the board this evening, and Board Exhibit 5 is a copy of the actual lease itself, which is an exhibit to the ordinance. Those are the board exhibits for this hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment?
I guess I'll make a comment also. Sorry about that. I just want to say, I think this is a really important ordinance for us to pass. This is really the first step in Berwyn establishing a permanent home up at this part of the township, and will increase, increase their level of service, decrease the response times to people in this area, and will save lives. And it's just a great step for the township. So I think it's important, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Any public comment? All right.
We also have one raised hand virtually, Madam Chair.
All right, we will start with Eamon.
Evening, Madam Chair, members of the board and the public. I'd just like to, I'm sorry, I forgot we're doing the hearing. What?
Oh, sorry, bad. Changing things up on me. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair of the board, staff, members of the public. Eamon, E-A-M-O-N, last name Brazunas, B as in boy, R-A-Z-U-N-A-S. Assistant Chief of Berwyn Fire Company and resident at 405 Redcoat Lane. Good, cool, thanks. Thank you again for everyone's work on this. This has been a long journey. Just real quick, since we, last meeting of the year here, timing-wise, as far as moving from 1100 West Valley to 1485 Valley Forge Road, on or about January 1st, December 27th is our move-in day. We're going to be moving everything over, and hopefully everything's set up. So a lot of work's going on. We appreciate the coordination with the staff, with Manager Martin, Finance Director Duraco, and the building official, Mr. Pilati. So a lot of balls in the air right now, but I also appreciate the work of the supervisors to help get this across the finish line. So we're excited to move into our new home. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I think we have a comment online as well.
Hi there. Hi there. My name is Carol Clark. Last name Clark has an E on the end. I'm at 1564 Overlook Place in Malvern, and I support this ordinance. I think it's great that we're moving forward in this direction. But I had one general clarification point and then two sort of technical questions that I have, and I'll start with the general clarification. From what I understand, there's 21,404 square feet that is rentable, and I was just wondering if you could break down for me what share of that the Berwyn Fire Department is getting. I believe they're in Suite A in the basement. What share of that, and what's the amount that the Boy Scouts are getting? I think they're staying on for a little bit. And then what is the remaining area that is not rented? And are there any plans associated or any plans for making that rentable or available to be rented in the future? And I'll pause and hear your answers to that. And then if you could come back to me, I just have two small technical questions.
So it's my recollection that there's 2 floors. The first floor, for now, the Boy Scouts are renting, and the basement floor is where we have the lease with Berwyn Fire Company, and that is the whole building, correct? So there is not any additional space beyond those 2. And the Boy Scouts, do we have an updated date?
65% is Boy Scouts, 35% is Berwyn.
And then in terms of the timing with the lease with the Boy Scouts, do we have any updates?
Boy Scouts lease is up at the end of November of 23, I believe. It's up.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then I have two technical questions. On page 3 of the ordinance, in the definition of security deposit, they say the words differ from what's in the parentheses. So security deposit, they say an amount of $100, and then in the parentheses, it's the dollar amount $500. And likewise, the second question I had related is under the tenant share, it says in words 65%, and then in parentheses 35%. So I didn't know if you wanted to get that verbiage cleared up, because it sounds like, as you just explained, 65% goes to the Boy Scouts and 35% to the Fire Department.
So that is correct. I think that was a oversight from the lease that we probably did with the Boy Scouts, so it should be 35%. Joe, do you know
Right.
what the security deposit amount is supposed to be?
500.
500. So I would ask the board to just make that, understand that the lease will be corrected to those amounts. The ordinance won't change because that text is just attaching the lease, but we will correct that section of 1.1 of the actual lease itself. And thank you, Ms. Clark, for finding that.
Yes, thank you for spotting that. Do you have any additional questions?
No, that's all. Thank you so very much for everyone working on this. Thanks again.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, hearing none, we will move to the vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And that concludes our public hearing, and that's it for public hearings for the night. Thank you very much. And I call to order the public meeting. And we will begin with announcements. Video from the 2022 tree lighting is now available on Comcast channels 964 and 15 and on Verizon channel 24, airing Tuesdays 10:30 p.m., Wednesdays 10:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., Fridays 10:30 a.m., and Saturdays 4:30 p.m. It can also be seen anytime on the video on demand site at Tredyffrin.org. And thank you to Jean Donahue and volunteers for coming out in the rain to put together that video. We really appreciate it. In observance of the holidays, the following schedule will be in place. Friday, December 23rd, offices closed at noon. Monday, December 26th, offices closed. Friday, December 30th, offices closed at 3 p.m. And Monday, January 2nd, offices closed. There are open positions on the Municipal Authority, Park and Recreation Board, Zoning Hearing Board, Library Foundation Board, and Park and Recreation Foundation Board. If you are interested, if you are interested in volunteering, please send a letter of interest and brief resume to the Township. And thank you very much, Arlene La Rosa, our court reporter, for all the work that you have done for us this year. We really appreciate it and hope you have a wonderful holiday. Now we are moving to the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. That was a quick one.
I do have a question on that. If you don't finish asking the question, when people jump in and say, does it count if they're, motioning and seconding and you haven't even finished stating for the record what it is?
Mr. McKenna?
I mean, it is on the agenda, but I would prefer, yes, if you would wait until the actual motion is read for the sake of the minutes.
All right, I think it's the first time that's happened. I will just read it for those who didn't hear. Motion to approve minutes of December 5th, 2022 public meeting. And that has been approved. All right, our board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal matters. And now we move to supervisor liaison reports. And we will start with Supervisor Miller.
Thank you. The Planning Commission met on December 15th. They went over 4 different things. One is there's a lot line change between 1696 and 1640 Yellow Spring Road. This is an amicable lot line change. There's a fence that has been existing there for a very long time. Neighbors became aware of this issue when a utility came to do some utility work, and they were like, this is in the wrong spot. And so this is, so what they want to do is they want to move the lot line, so it's basically moving 0.72 acres. One lot is 15.72, the other is 3 acres. After this change, it'll be 15 acres and 3.72 acres. There are no waivers, no variances required, but the 7 waivers required in order to do this, all of which are things like stamps on documents and sidewalks and things that are just leaving the existing condition the way it is. The Planning Commission recommends the Board of Supervisors approve this change. The second thing is, and this is an interesting historical thing, there's a building at 14 Leopard Road. It's a small office building. It's actually on 5 separate lots, one of which is 7 West Golf Club Road. And the situation is, this actually occurred when the Paoli development zone existed. So they were trying to encourage development in Paoli. This building was built in this location. The zoning didn't apply because of the way that zone was set up. And basically the owner of the building wants to get the commercial building onto a commercial, a C1 zoned property, and the residents in a R2 zone property, which is consistent with the zoning in those areas, and just have 2 lots instead of 5, with the building occupying 3 of them, parking lots occupying multiple. As part of the discussion, the owner agreed to repair the stormwater basin that's on the property, to agree to a use and operating agreement, or a maintenance and operating agreement with the township for that, and to add buffering between 7 and 9 West Golf Club Road and the commercial building. So it all seemed to make sense, and the Planning Commission is also going to recommend that we approve that change to that area. Delaware Friends School came and presented the latest update on their project. They're finished with zoning, and now they're for planning approval. This was just an update meeting. Super interesting project. Happy to go into more details, but I guess the one thing that we should note is they have agreed with the neighbors to implement a pretty extensive stormwater management system. So they're going to control all the water on the property, not just the stormwater from the addition that they're adding to the school. So they're very neighbor friendly. Several neighbors were in the meeting and are very supportive of the project. So these guys are being good neighbors, and this is, I think, a really nice project for the community. Next step for that is there's a number of comments in the review letters. The township and the engineers for the project are going to get together and going to go through those and sort that out. So they'll be in front of planning a couple more times. And finally, I think this is item B on the agenda for tonight, is an H2O PA grant. The Planning Commission signed the letter they need to sign, and they're recommending that we approve moving forward, asking for $3 million from the state for 3 separate projects, which we hope we get. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions?
Next meeting is the 19th of January next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Humble?
No update for Parks and Rec, as the board does not meet in December. Thank you.
Supervisor Holt?
No updates tonight?
Supervisor Wysocki?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an update for the Zoning Hearing Board from the December 14 meeting. At that meeting, the Zoning Hearing Board considered 4 matters. First, an impervious coverage variance sought by Swedesford Plaza, and that was continued for 1 year at the applicant's request. Second, a residential fence height variance application. The board will decide at its January 26 meeting. And third, an impervious coverage variance sought by the Tredyffrin Easttown School District for the Hillside Elementary School, continued until the board's January 26 meeting. Lastly, the Zoning Hearing Board held the final public hearing on the application of the Tredyffrin Easttown School Board relating to the school district's property located at Old State Road and Cassat Road, the former Doyle and McConnell nursery property, seeking special exceptions and variances to permit the use of the subject property for athletic fields and related facilities. The board held the record open until January 9 for briefs from the school district and all other parties designated in the hearing. The Zoning Hearing Board will announce its decision in the school district's application at the next Zoning Hearing Board meeting on January 26, 2023. As a final Zoning Hearing Board matter, I'd like to move the reappointment of Robin Forbes Drucker as an alternate member of the Zoning Hearing Board.
So we have a motion for this reappointment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any board comment? Any public comment? All
I'd
right.
like to make one board comment. Robin I've sat in at most of the Zoning Hearing Board meetings this year, and though an alternate, Robin has sat on the board, sat on many meetings, and has done a really good job.
Thank you.
I would like to comment. I've sat in on 2 of zoning hearing board's meetings this year. One in my capacity as a supervisor, and another one as a neighbor when there was a matter before the board that affected my neighborhood. And Robin Drucker was at both of these meetings, and I thought she did a terrific job. She asked really good questions. She was definitely following along and seemed to me to be very engaged. So I support this reappointment.
Thanks for the comment. Any other comments? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-21, formally requesting an H2O PA stormwater grant from DCED and designation of signature authority, and to approve the following.
Dr. Gussie,
Did I skip one?
there are a couple more supervisors for.
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I was gonna roll with
Supervisor
it.
Freed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Historical Commission met on December 14th, 2022. They discussed a number of items, including their 2023 work plan that includes their tasks and goals for the coming year. The next meeting is January 12th, 2023.
Thank you. Supervisor Basker.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. So, there was no Library Board of Trustees meeting in November, and the meeting scheduled for December 8th was canceled for lack of a quorum. The next meeting is scheduled for 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 26th. Now, I'm sorry to report that Library Director Chris Kibler will be leaving us in January. I think he did a great job in terms of navigating the library through the pandemic and in keeping going. So, I thank him for that. Now, as the new position that he's moving to is a considerable step up career-wise, I'd like to say that much as we appreciate his service, I'm not going to say anything about trying to keep him on. I think I'd like to wish him well in his success, and we expect to shortly begin a search for a replacement. Moving on to the Environmental Advisory Council that met on Tuesday, November 29th. They renominated Amber Levy as the chair for 2023. There was a presentation by the Stroud Water Research Center on dramatic increases in salinity in some of our creeks, and sometimes to high enough levels where it's considered toxic. And these are toxic by US EPA standards, which are considerably weaker than standards of some states and of Canada. So these are, really considered toxic levels, and they showed us some graphs, and the graphs really showed going up recent times. Now, and these are spikes. It's not as if the salinity is considerably at those levels consistently. The problem, they don't know what the cause is. The hypothesis is that much of it may be historical from piles of salt that people left on parking lots unprotected, and that now it's got into the soil, and maybe from the soil it's leaking into the water. We just don't know. But the observed fact is that there have been these spikes in salinity to toxic levels. Moving on, there is a draft native planting appendix for the proposed woodland conservation ordinance. Good progress is being made on infiltration project design at several sites surrounding Krabby Creek. And there are plans to install a rain gauge on the Hillside Elementary green roof to assess its effectiveness in managing stormwater. Right now what they do is when they sort of see how much water, you can measure how much water came off, but you don't know how much water actually fell, because they do that on a regional basis and then assume that that is what fell on Hillside. And there could, of course, be variations because of the local microclimate, so they plan to install a rain gauge to actually measure how much rain falls and what the green roof does to control that. There was a report to the Hardy Plant Society on work in Wilson Farm Park in 2022, and they've actually invited the EAC to submit a proposal for a park for Woodbine or Friendship Park for trees in 2023. The EAC is starting to plan for January 16th, 2023, Martin Luther King Day of Service, and always looking for volunteers for that. Our EAC member Jonathan Wilson plans some more environmental assessments and measurements in Krabby Creek over the winter, and also in Krabby Creek Park, tree tube removal will be scheduled for March 2023. Tracy Viola is working with the township staff on updates to the website with information and educational material on the single-use plastic ordinance that we passed. Suzanne Hay is discussing with township staff the possibility of recycling at Tredyffrin Township events, community events, and also gathering information so that when we get into single hauler decisions that they can include composting. Now the EAC is working on a Growing Greener report to the Pennsylvania DEP on the rain garden program. That's a required report. And members also discussed their personal EAC goals for 2023. So there was quite a busy meeting that day. The next meeting of the EAC will be at 7 p.m. on January 24th, which is a Tuesday. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Dr. Gussie.
Thanks, everyone. I apologize for cutting you off short. We will go back to the motion to adopt Resolution 2022-21, formally requesting an H2O PA stormwater grant from DCED and designation of signature authority, and to approve the following documents associated with the PA stormwater grant application: project funding letter of commitment, DCED grant exhibit 12 FFATA form, and ownership and maintenance letter. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the documents before you today are for the H2O PA Commonwealth grant. This application is kind of a subset of previous grants that we've submitted covering 3 different projects: Gregory Lane Phase 1 for some additional funding, Phase 2, the Woodcrest, Willis, and Upper Wheatley project in Trout Creek, and a Crum Creek project over on West Circular Avenue. These have all been before the board before, and they are currently projects that are identified in the 5-year capital program. The authorized resolution for signatory authority and just for the project itself is a requirement of submitting the application. There's a project funding match contribution letter that just basically is indicating that the board is accepting and approving submittal of these grants and will provide the matching funds. We have discussed that before, and recently we've gotten some funds for some of these projects, and we've already identified funds as well. We have $1 million identified for the Woodcrest, Willis, and Upper Wheatley project as part of the Tredyffrin Township ARP money. We've recently heard from Chester County that we are getting money for Gregory Lane for Phase 1, substantial money. It's over $300,000. So we're asking kind of for the additional money for that project as well. So that's the second one. There's a Accountability and Transparency Act document that we have to submit as part of this process for the project. The Commonwealth requires that for all applicants. And then there's the letter of ownership and maintenance responsibilities. The Commonwealth wants the board to identify that the township will be the responsible party to operate and maintain these structures, inspect them in the future. If the board has any questions, I can certainly answer them.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment?
Yeah, I have one question, Steve. What's the application for? How much money?
The application total is $3,255,635.
Okay, thank you. And I also have one more question. I know H2O is water. I learned that somewhere along my educational. But but specifically it says H2O PA stormwater. Is it just like another designation for it's a stormwater grant, correct? Or-
The H2O program actually covers multiple things. It covers small water supply, sanitary sewer, and stormwater projects. So you can apply for grant money for any types of those particular projects. This H2O program, I think, starts at like basically $500,000 is like the threshold, and you can start at, and you can go up to $20 million. I've never seen anybody get $20 million. I mean, that would be nice to see, but I think it's a larger size project that these projects, or this grant will actually authorize and fund. I've seen them for sanitary sewer projects in the past of like $3 million.
Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? Any public comments? Mr. Clark.
Ray Clark, Stormwater Task Force co-chair with Anne Murphy, and Anne and I have been talking to Steve about these projects that the grant is for, and all three of them came on the Stormwater Task Force list, and obviously we're very pleased to be writing a letter in support of the grant application. And I thank Steve for all his work in putting the grants together, to the board supervisors for your support. And I want to kind of weigh in on like a number of things that are all stormwater related that were mentioned in the liaison reports and everything. And to kind of thank the board for your leadership, which is clearly percolating down to the Planning Commission, who apparently encouraged stormwater basin improvement, to the residents who are clearly very engaged and help get Delaware Valley Friends to go way above and beyond what they need have done, to the Zoning Hearing Board, who clearly pay a lot of attention to the reason for your ordinances and impervious coverage, to the infiltration projects. It's very clear that, the number one priority of this board and this township is dealing with stormwater. And, it's really come from your leadership over the past couple of years. And I wanted to thank you for that. So, and then one thing on salt water in creeks. I was tramping around collecting some of the samples for that. And we did it at a time where really the creeks are being filled with, groundwater, basically. It's not like immediately running off the road. So all that salt is kind of in our soil. So it's going to take a long time for different practices to actually have an impact on that. But it will certainly help the more the township does to limit salt on the roads in the winter, the more residents do to limit salt on their driveways. And this will have a big impact on the health of our waterways, which obviously are so important to Tredyffrin. So lots of important stormwater, watershed things going on in the township. So thanks.
Thanks so much. Do we have any other public comment? All right, hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Now we move to the motion to approve structural retaining wall easement for the Chesterbrook Leaning Wall Replacement Project. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the following easement agreement has been reviewed by the Township Engineering Department as well as the Solicitor's Office. It is a easement that goes along with both temporary access for the project for the Chesterbrook Leaning Wall replacement, as well as a permanent easement that actually codifies sections of the end wall and the leaning wall that are not within the right-of-way limits today, but they're only partially in there. So this will allow the township to be able to have future operation and maintenance responsibilities for that area that's within our right-of-way. We've met with the Green Hills Landowners Association on site, and we've shared the document, and they have executed the document. So it's really before the board tonight for your authorization, and then next step, we'll be getting ready to move forward with the project in 2023.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion?
Well, I'd just like to make a comment that when I first heard about this, I went down to the area, walked out there, took some pictures, and at that time itself, I was quite concerned about the possibility of that wall coming down, and if that wall were to come down, it would affect the ability of Chesterbrook Boulevard to carry traffic just because of where it's located. So I'm glad we're finally making progress with getting that taken care of. So thank you, Engineer Berger.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Any public comment?
Good evening. Mark Lewis from Chateau Circle. I also wanted to thank the Works Department for the project that they're about to do on the leaning wall. And then I wanted to reflect on the speed with which the department was able to repair a lot of the walking paths under Chesterbrook Boulevard after last year's storm. And overall, this shows an understanding from the township of how important it is to navigate the walkways and the ability of many of all of our residents to walk, cycle, dog walk, etc. At the paths in Chesterbrook. Quite a lot of the relevant owners of different parts of the walkways really take their responsibility. That's not the case at the moment in all parts of the pathways in Chesterbrook, which means it's quite difficult to navigate across all of the pathways and all of the get across all the streams, etc. As I say, many people are taking their responsibility, but it's not the case at the moment. I know that there's a number of people pushing for improvements, better communication, etc. But I just wanted to call out that people appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a related motion to authorize staff to advertise and receive bids for the Chesterbrook Leaning Wall Replacement Project. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair, members of the board, in keeping in the end of the last discussion, we're asking the board tonight to let the engineering department advertise and receive bids for this Chesterbrook Leaning Wall project in January of 2023. Currently, as we said, with this agreement, the easement agreement was one of the items we had out there. We do have the draft of the construction documents under review in the department right now, and we also just received our DEP permit a week ago, so we pretty much have all the items we pretty much need within our reach, and we'd be looking to move this project forward, advertise it, receive bids, and then award it late in the spring and be able to start with construction early in the season next year.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion?
Steve, I have a question. So there was we spoke a while ago about a potential fence at the top of the wall. Is that happening or not? Have you gotten input on?
There is a split rail fence that is included in the current design package on the tops, because right now there is no fencing. There's a fairly, I think the culvert pipe is 8 foot high, and there's basically another foot or two of drop in between the structure itself. So it's a safety, concern. We're doing it for public safety, improvement. Just a split rail fence with basically a wire mesh on that backing of that fence.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve proposal from Gateway Search for placement of a staff accountant. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've had an opening at staff accountant for almost 2 months now. We've posted the job, LinkedIn, Indeed, anywhere and everywhere that you can imagine, with really no luck in finding somebody. So our HR director, Casey Sands, at her previous employer, used this search firm. They specialize in placing accountants and payroll specialists. So we are asking the board to approve. Their fee is 20% of the first year's salary, which for our range could range between 10 and 14,000. Part of the reason why I wanted to try to get it approved tonight, so that way we can include it in the 2022 expense and not 23. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board questions or comments?
How long do they think it's going to take to get somebody?
Yesterday would have been nice.
That's not happening, we know.
I think, Casey had an initial discussion with him about a week and a half ago, and he said he already has a list that, he would send to people. So hopefully within the month, especially, I would love to have somebody placed by the end of January, starting in February, since we have all of the audit coming up and getting ready for that. And
No, I know you have a lot going on. I appreciate that they have, I wanted to hear they had a list. That was really the words I wanted to hear, so that's great. Thanks.
Any other board comment or questions? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to direct the ordinance subcommittee to explore a responsible contractor ordinance. Supervisor Holt.
I'd like to thank the board's consideration of this initiative and for the public discussion that we have had previously, and also for their indulgence of all the documents and articles and sample ordinances that have circulated. I think setting a standard by which the board awards certain large contracts for work on public buildings makes sense. It will ensure the township's use of properly qualified contractors and subcontractors, and that such qualified labor will continue to be available for years to come. I look forward to working with the subcommittee and our solicitor on this important ordinance and exploring it. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We move to new matters. Oh, it's funny. It says citizen. Usually I do board member new matters first, but it has citizen new matters first, so we're going to do citizen new matters. Do we have any citizen new matters? Any public comment tonight? All right, hearing none. Do we have any board member new matters?
Yes, I have a question, which I know I could have asked it online or by a phone call to our township manager, but I think there's a lot of people who would like to know the answer, so I like to ask it publicly so everybody can get the answer at once. But my question is about the flag in Wilson Farm Park at the Veterans Memorial. I noticed at the beginning of this year in January, the huge flag that was up was terribly ragged, but then they replaced it pretty quickly, like in February, with a beautiful new huge flag. And then last week, while I was taking my plastic bags to the recycle bin there in the park, I noticed it's just a small flag. The big flag is gone, and there's only a very small flag, like we might flag on a normal-sized flagpole, which makes it look minuscule, and I just wondered if you know what happened.
Sure. My understanding is during the winter, they do put the small flag up because the garrison, the large one's called the garrison flag, and windy weather, winter storms, it gets torn up, and I believe they do replace it with a smaller flag. I'm not sure of the size they select, but the veterans group does most of the work there, and if they're in a pinch, we help them with it, getting it up. And but I do know they do take the garrison flag down generally for winter season. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other board member new matters? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, everyone in favor? All right. Happy holidays, everyone.